Hello and welcome to another episode of Abbey the Podcast Lady. Today we have another special guest joining us, courtesy of the Pod Match service that I am so incredibly fond of. We are chatting today with Scott Miller. Scott, I am so excited to get into all of your amazing stories that you pitched me on Pod Match, because the second I saw that come through, I'm like, oh, there's some doozies in here.
There are, life is interesting, and you never know how interesting it's going to get. And I am thankful. It's so crazy. I am 66 years old, actually a little closer to 67 than 66. I think only little kids, which don't say they're three and a half or four and a half. Little kids and old people count half years.
Yeah.
Everybody else in between, we don't count it. But I'm happy and proud to be almost 67. And in my 67 years, my life has taken so many twists and turns that I never saw coming. And so I'm happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about in this amazing life that I am thankful I get to live.
I am so excited. So I really want to start with the first thing that you mentioned to me when we were chatting on Podmatch, and that is the story of you being a person in the television space and working in traditional broadcasting, because I come from that world too. I was a radio DJ for almost a decade, and that was my dream job, and it's all I ever wanted to be. And so I think we have a lot of similarities in finding our dream roles, doing that kind of thing, and then transitioning out of it to move on to the next dream and the next big thing. So I would love to hear how you got your start in the traditional broadcast space.
Well, it starts with radio at 16. I was a high school junior in Denison, Iowa, and I was running track, but I wasn't very good. I was not a good athlete, but I played all four sports. And anyway, so I sprained my ankle and could not participate in a track meet. My coach mentioned to Denison, Iowa was a small town, less than 10,000 people. The radio guy, they broadcast from that track meet. And he asked me if I would be on with him. And I'm telling you something, Abby, that's when my life changed, because that's when I knew that I liked talking, and I liked it a lot. So give me a microphone, tell me what we're supposed to be talking about. It's better if I know something about it, which of course I knew the track team very well. So got started on radio. Worked on radio in a small town in Iowa, Creston, Iowa, went to Harrison, Arkansas, and Berryville, Arkansas. And so I'm working on the radio. And there's a guy, a television sports guy, Channel 10 in Springfield, Missouri, and in northern Arkansas, that part of northern Arkansas, you watched Springfield TV channels. And so I communicated with the sports guy and gave him a couple of tips on some things that had happened that I knew about. And so one day he calls me back and says, "Hey, Scott, we've got a weekend sports opening. And I told the news director about you. I listened to you when I was driving near your area, and I think you're really good on the radio. So you have, if you want it, an interview this Saturday at the TV station for our weekend sports job." I got excited about that. So I didn't own a suit. I borrowed a suit. I didn't own a tie, didn't know how to tie a tie. So I had somebody tie it for me, and then I loosened it so that when I got to go, I put it on and just tightened it up. I borrowed the suit. I borrowed the tie. I go to the TV station. I sit on the set and do a demo. Abby, here's what happens. The news director says to me on the walk back from his office, "You've never been on television before?" I said, "No, sir." "You studied it in college?" "No, sir." He said, "Scott, I am just sick. I hired a guy yesterday. He has TV experience. I figured there's no way this radio guy that's never been on TV is going to be any good. You are 100 times better than the guy I hired. You belong on television." If I had known, Abby, I would have asked him if I could have the tape, so I would have a demo tape.
Right.
But I didn't know. I didn't know to do that. I am now looking in broadcasting, I think it was Broadcasting Magazine back 100 years ago, and they put job openings in the back. So I called a TV station in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Now, I'm a native Iowan. I know Iowa sports. I continue to follow Iowa sports. I'm like, this is my job. Talked to the news director. I said, look, I don't have a demo tape. I'll drive to Cedar Rapids. And if you put me on the set, you'll hire me before the day is out. So he agreed. 2 or 3 days later, I drove all night long in the middle of the night from northern Arkansas to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, had no money. I spent the night in the McDonald's parking lot because I figured it would be safe. When I woke up, I put on my borrowed suit and put my borrowed tie back on. And I go into the bathroom at McDonald's and make myself look as good as I can. And I sit in the lobby for 8 hours. We had an appointment, but I sat there for 8 hours. And he comes out at 5 o'clock and he said, Scott, I'm sorry, can't do this. Da 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 da. Give me your resume. I said, look, you know, and I know you're not hiring me off my resume. You're not.
Right.
So it's a waste of time. But I said, it's not right what you did to me. So someday you're going to regret this. I don't know when it is, but someday you're going to regret it. I was, what was I, 19 years old or something like that, and a little full of myself.
The delusion of being 19. Sometimes I wish I could get it back. Other times I'm like, never again.
I understand that. So I drove across the state of Iowa to Denison, where my parents still lived, and I kind of went there to have mom, have a home cooked meal and maybe have mom and dad sympathize with me. Sunday night, we are watching KTIV TV, Channel 4 in Sioux City, Iowa. I was born in Sioux City, had a lot of family in Sioux City. We're watching the news, and the sports guy is horrible. I mean, bad, 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 bad. Monday morning, Abbey, I promise you this is the truth. Monday morning, I call and say, what is the news director's name? Mike Beecher. Great. Could you please connect me with Mr. Beecher? Mr. Beecher picks up the phone. I said, Mr. Beecher, my name is Scott Miller. You don't know me, but I watched your sports last night, and the guy was, let's just say, not good. I've never been on television in my life, but if you'll put me on your set today, you will hire me to be his replacement before the day is out. He said, you're right, Scott. I don't know you, but I like your attitude. How soon can you be here? I said, I'm an hour and 15 minutes away. He said, I'll see you in an hour and 15 minutes. I drove up to Sioux City. I got on the set immediately, and we walked back to his office. He doesn't say a word. We sit down, and he says, you're right, Scott. I am going to hire you. The job wasn't even open.
Right.
I got the job, went from the weekend guy 3 days a week as a news photographer. I knew nothing about that either. I didn't know anything about being on TV. And then a few months later, I'm at this banquet. John Wooden, the legendary UCLA coach, was speaking in Sioux City. A couple of days before that, the general manager of the TV station comes in to the newsroom, and everybody's like, what's he doing in here? Because our GM never went into the newsroom. So he walked straight up to me and said, and called me Scotty. He said, Scotty, he said, there's a banquet Saturday night. Would you like to be my guest? Yes, sir. I would love to. So we're sitting at this round table of 8 with all his media cronies, all the radio guys that own the radio stations and manage them and everything else. And one guy says, Scotty, can you tell me why you're on the weekends and not Monday through Friday? Because you're a lot better than that Monday through Friday guy. And then all these other guys chime in. Next thing you know, Monday, I am anointed to become the Monday through Friday sports guy at KTIV TV Channel 4 in Sioux City, Iowa. The funniest thing of all is that's not a way to become popular in a newsroom. Now, radio and TV people have egos. You have to have an ego to put up with the abuse and all of that stuff that you sometimes get. It did not go well, but it went well for me. But it was kind of tough sledding, and I was too young to know what was really going on,
Especially if you're in that 19, 20 age range, because that's when I started too. I was fresh out of college when I got hired, and you don't know what you don't know, especially when you're around people who've been doing it for 20, 30 years. It's a very strange dynamic.
It is, but I love being on TV, and especially Sioux City was my hometown. So it's where I was born, had family there. It was a good time. It was a good time, and it's a crazy series of events that happened that I never could have predicted.
So what decade was that in? Was that 80s, 90s?
Yeah, that would have been the 80s. It would have been, I started on TV, I think, in 1980.
Okay. You started when you were 19. How long did that TV run last? Did you hop stations? Did you change states? What was kind of the trajectory and the pattern with that?
Yeah, this is such a great story. It's so funny to even believe this really happened. And I promise all of this may sound wacky, but it's true. So well, on television, you get off the set at 10:30 or 10:35, and there's nothing else to do but drink.
Oh, yeah.
So it's why a lot of TV people drink a lot, and some have a problem with alcohol. But anyway, so we finished the news, the whole group of us on the weekend, and or during the week at that time. And so a bunch of us went to this bar where are you familiar with a loose meat sandwich?
Of course, I'm familiar with a loose meat
Okay, I
sandwich.
figured nobody in Costa Rica, where I live now, knows what a loose meat sandwich is, and they don't know it in Dallas, where I lived for many years either. But okay, this place had, I don't remember the name of it, but this place had great loose meat sandwiches and cold beer. And there's nothing else you need
That's a perfect
after
combo.
the news. So we go there, and I go up to the bar to get another round for all of us that are there. And a guy by the name of Bob Lawrence, that was a stranger to me, this guy says to me, you're too good to be working on TV in Sioux City. And I said, well, thank you, sir. That's very nice of you to say. I appreciate that. And he said, let me introduce myself. I'm Bob Lawrence from Channel 9. Now, at the time in Sioux City, Iowa, this has changed since, but at the time there were 3 TV stations, but only 2 of us had news. So it's head-to-head competition, 4 and 9, 4 and 9. Bob Lawrence was the news director for the competition. So I'm like, what is he, what's he talking about? I thought maybe he was just trying to blow up my ego so I'd get lazy or something. That's, a young kid. What do you know? So he says to me, have you ever thought about working in Minneapolis? I said, no, I really haven't thought about, working anywhere else right now. I just, got the Monday through Friday gig a few months ago. He said, you're too good to be working in Sioux City. Would you consider going to Peoria? I said, I'd consider going anywhere. He said, look, here's the deal. And at the time, Channel 9 was owned by Forward Communications Corporation, and their sister station in Peoria had a sports opening. Okay. And he says to me, here's what's going to happen, Scott. Is the break room number at the TV station still blank? He knew the direct phone number to the break room. I said, yeah, I believe it is. He said, okay, be there at noon on Monday. I'm going to call you with the details. So Monday, I go in a little early. I'm in the break room. Phone rings. I pick it up. Is this Scott? Yes, sir. Is this Bob? Yes, sir. He said, look, here's the deal. There's a TV station in Peoria that we own that has a sports opening. They're going to hire you. I've already told them about you. I've already sent them your tape. I told them I want you out of town. You belong in a bigger market. Here's how it's going to go down. Go to the Sioux City airport. There'll be a ticket waiting for you. Your flight leaves Saturday morning at 7 a.m. They're going to offer you the job on the spot. You can't tell them I told you this, but they're going to offer you $25,000 a year. You tell them 32 is the only offer you'll take, and they will give you 32. I know how much they can afford to pay you. It goes down exactly like he said. Unbelievable. Talk about a gift. And so I went to Peoria. I flew that weekend. I got the job. I loved my time in Peoria, and I worked on television there for a couple of years. And then I got back into the radio business and did morning drive radio in Peoria. TV is great, but if you want to have a family, if you're married and you want to have a family, you stay up. No, when you get off a job at 5, you don't go to bed till 10 or 11. When you get off a job at 10:30 or 11, you don't go to sleep till 4. You sleep till noon. You get up, you shower, you go to work again. So it's not a life, that's why there's so many people, especially in the smaller to medium-sized markets, that are younger, because they're willing to do that.
It's a grind. And I did morning drive radio for almost 5 years. And you're up at 3 a.m. to prep a show, to start the show at 5, to then do it until 10, finish out whatever else you need to get done. And then you're crashed out on the couch by 5 p.m. It's a very weird grind of a lifestyle that I think people, when they turn on their TV, when they turn on their radio, they're just like, oh, yay, fun. Someone's entertaining me. And they don't realize the craziness that goes on to make that happen.
No, they do not. It's an isolated life in a lot of ways. And it's why a lot of radio and TV people are introverts.
Yeah.
They're not naturally extroverted. I am, but not everybody is. A lot of people are not, as you well know.
We kind of put on this mask to go out and entertain. And then once we can take it off and go back into our little hermit crab shell, we're very happy doing that as well.
Yeah. That wasn't me, but I know it was most of the people I worked with.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned also in the message you sent on Podmatch about wrestling a bear. I'm very, and not just wrestling bear, you wrestled a bear twice. Can we get into that story? Because I am very intrigued by that.
I did not learn my lesson. I'm not very good at learning lessons, but I paid for it the second time. So I was doing something, I don't remember what we called it, but basically sports challenge. So people would challenge me to do sporting things. And it was just a fun, silly feature segment in the sports when it was a little slow. So somebody said, Victor, the bear has a name. And you can look this up on Google, by the way. Victor, the wrestling bear. Now, Victor was around for years. He had a muzzle, okay, and he was declawed. Victor, the wrestling bear. And he wrestled some famous people. I was not one of them, but he wrestled some famous people. So Victor is at a mall in Galesburg, Illinois, which is in our coverage area. So I drive up to Galesburg, Illinois, and you have to sign this release form before you get in the ring with Victor, the wrestling bear. And the release form says, Abbey, that if you die, it says it in really good language, legalese, but basically it says if you die, it's your own fault because you're stupid.
Because you signed up to do this, yes.
Yes. So anyway, I sign it. I don't care. I see him wrestle a few other people, and no big deal. I get in the ring, and amazingly enough, in pretty short order, Victor the wrestling bear has me down, and I'm like, okay, I give up. That's it. That's enough. So months later, Victor, I guess he made the tour of malls. Victor the wrestling bear is in Bloomington Normal. And so I get another person that says, Scott, it was the PR person at the mall, very smart, says, you should have a rematch and maybe you'll be 1-1 with Victor. Right. So I do it. Now, here's where the fun part comes in, Abbey. I am wrestling Victor the wrestling bear. He gets me down. So Victor has me down. And when you're down in wrestling, the first thing you got to do is you got to stand up. And then you take the arms and you take this arm and pull it out that way, and that arm, pull it out that way. And then you rotate and get away from your opponent, in this case, a bear. I did that. And it worked. Well, for about 20 seconds or 10 seconds, it worked. And Victor got me down, and he took his paw, and I'm on my back, and he slammed his paw right here on the chest. I knew immediately I was in pain, did not know immediately that he had cracked my ribs. Also did not know, till I went to the doctor, that there's pretty much nothing you can do for cracked ribs. When you breathe or cough or sneeze, your ribs hurt when you have cracked ribs. So, needless to say, I am 0-2 against Victor the wrestling bear, would never consider doing it again, but it's a great story. And I so wish I had the tape, because the second time we had video of it and they slow-moed Victor. You remember the Lee Harvey Oswald when he got shot by Jack Ruby and he's going,
yeah,
that was me. That was me when Victor hit my ribs, hit my chest. It was, anyway, I have lived to tell the story and I would not do it again.
So I'm an avid hunter and I'm a bear hunter, and I can't imagine getting Anywhere close to a bear, even one that has a muzzle on and is declawed, those things are terrifying. And so for
Yeah,
you to willingly do this twice,
yeah,
major props to you because I would never.
yeah. Well, ignorance is bliss, and I have never hunted a bear and never really thought about how vicious they are. I just thought if other people did it, I could do it. Another funny story, though, that time in Bloomington Normal, there was a woman that wanted to wrestle the bear. And she says, "You won't let me?" And he said, "No, ma'am, I'm sorry, you can't." And she said, "You are a sexist." And he says, "Ma'am, if you really want to get in the ring with Victor, no problem. But you might want to know that it's mating season in the wild, and it might not go well for you."
Nope.
She quit talking and she backed away.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. This was a long time ago. But I have had an interesting and fun life. And one of the things that, Abby, I believe, we're only here for a short time. And I want to do all the things I want to do because it's going to be a short time. I don't want to be 70 or 80 or whatever and regret what I didn't do. You don't regret most of what you did, even if you did stupid stuff, which I
Like
have.
wrestling bears.
Yes, and that would be a good illustration. But you regret what you didn't do. So I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah, I think that's very wise words to live by. So, I am a podcast producer. I produce for so many different clients around the world. And one of my clients is the Love Story podcast, where we have couples on to share their unique love stories. And part of what you sent me on Podmatch was your own multiple love stories. And I think they're just fascinating. So, if you would kindly grace me with the love stories that you've had in your life and how they got you to where you are
Sure.
now, I would love to hear them.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for this opportunity. There are changes in life that we make, and there are changes in life that other people make for us. Firing you from a job would be a change somebody else made for us. In this case, my wife of 32 years left me for another man. And I was 32 years. I was devastated. I contemplated that I didn't want to live. And it was an awful, awful time. I was working on television again as a news anchor and reporter in Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is a place I love. I love Fayetteville. I love the people of Northwest Arkansas. And so it was awesome being on TV there. But I quit my job because one night, about 10 minutes before the 10 o'clock news, just before we're going on the set, I'm sitting next to the producer and I'm going over again our top three stories, and they were horrible, tragic, sad stories. Do you remember when those women, I think it was Cleveland, those women escaped from the guy that had held them for years?
Yeah.
That was the time a local kid had fallen to his death from a prominent landmark in Arkansas. So it was local and it was national and all these stories. And I, at 10 minutes to 10, just break down and start crying. And I am literally bawling. I mean, tears streaming down the cheeks. Now, it's also because my wife left me for another man. So it's like life just sucks at that moment. So if the producer says, "Dude, we go on in like 10 minutes. Are you going to be okay?" I said, "I'll be fine. I'm a pro. I'll be fine. Let me go in the bathroom and make sure I don't look like I've been crying." So I go do the newscast. And that is when I decided that I'm going to quit my job because I just couldn't deal with all of the pain, a lot of horrible stories in news. I mean, really, to be the one to have to tell this story on TV live is difficult to do sometimes, even under the best of circumstances. So I did not want to be the guy because I knew there would come a time when I would literally start crying live on TV. And for the rest of my life, I knew somebody would put that video on YouTube. And for the rest of my life, people would say, "Hey, I know you. Oh my gosh, you're the crying guy on TV."
Yeah.
I just knew that was going to happen. So I didn't want that to be the case. And I don't know if you've ever watched the story, the old Mary Tyler Moore show where she was the TV, was she a producer, I guess?
Yep.
At the end of that episode, and the reason I remember this so well is I just watched a Mary Tyler Moore special on television of her story. And at the end of that series, turns out the lights, closes the door, comes back and takes a look around. And I forgot about the TV episode. I did the exact same thing. I didn't leave the TV station till like 1 a.m. All the lights were out in the studio and the newsroom. And I'm walking around kind of saying goodbye. And it was so freaking sad, man. I got to tell you, Abby, it was horrible because I loved doing what I was doing. I go to Dallas, Texas to live with my son because I have no job and I have no money. And in my eyes, I probably have no future. Been there a few days and I get a Facebook message from the girl I took to prom 36 years earlier. She did not know at the time that I was madly in love with her in high school and desperately wanted to marry her. I just didn't tell her because I was intimidated by how beautiful she was. And so she sends me this message. I'm really sorry to hear about your divorce or your wife leaving you and all this, and sends me this really nice message. And I get it at 10 o'clock at night. And I happen to notice she's on Facebook. I sent her a message and we started talking for 2 or 3 hours. I just told her the truth. I said, did you not know that I thought you were the hottest girl in school and that I had the hots for you? And that I went on and on. And she said a few things. So I was in Dallas and she was in San Antonio, which I did not know where she was at the time. And I said, so where are you? She told me San Antonio. I said, look, I could be there in 5 hours. She said, well, I have to work tomorrow. I said, well, I'll be there when you get off work. So I drove to San Antonio. We reconnected, spent 2.5 days together, and it was like we were 18 all over again.
Oh, that just makes my heart melt into a puddle.
Thank you. We were separated, apart, no communication for 36 years, 1 month and 5 days, but who's counting? Prom. We had one date in high school, our senior prom. That was it. She was all I could think about. Before long, I was leaving Dallas and moving in with her in San Antonio. She was truly the most amazing woman I'd ever met. Accomplished, beautiful, amazing. And so we got married on 12/10/14, which was a Wednesday. Now, who gets married on a Wednesday on the island of Ambergris Caye in Belize? Who gets married on a Wednesday? Well, we did. Add 12, 10, and 14, Abby, and you get 36, which is the number of years we were apart.
Oh my
And
gosh.
on our wedding day, around her waist, Maria wore the shawl she wore to prom 36 years earlier. She had kept it all those years. And then 113 days later, she had a heart attack and died in my arms. It was a fairy tale romance. We would go places and I would say, do you want to hear the most amazing love story you've never heard in your entire life? And I would tell them in more details than I just shared with you. It was amazing. And unfortunately, it was only 113 days married, 22 months together. Maria was just an amazing woman. When I introduced her to my adult children, I was telling my daughter about Maria. Now, Maria was born in Mexico, but I never thought of her as Mexican. It just wasn't something I ever thought. So my daughter, as I'm telling her about Maria, I said, she's Mexican. Who knew why I said it? It made no sense to say it, but for the first time ever, I thought of her as Mexican and said it. My daughter says, well, duh. I said, I don't understand. She said, Dad, who do you think are the most beautiful women in the world? Eva Longoria, Jennifer Lopez, Eva Mendes, Sofia Vergara. Dad, you have a type. Now, her mom was not that type, but it didn't hit me until I was driving away from her house that what she said was true and that the reason I had a type was Maria. She was, for me, the very definition of beauty. That's it. So, also, 2 months after we're married, she says to me, if anything ever happens to me, I want you to be happy. I thought, well, that's kind of strange. But at the same time, I knew where this came from. Her husband of 25 years had cancer and had hidden it from her until the very end. And he passed shortly thereafter. And he never had and I'm not saying anything bad about him, but he never had that conversation with her that
Mm-hmm.
she just had with me. If anything ever happens, I want you to be happy. Because in this case, he knew it was going to happen. So I'm like, okay, I have a type. I know what the type is. And Scott, I want you to be happy. And I knew she meant it. By the way, I also know that she wanted me to say it back to her. And of course I did. Long story short, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try. Went out on a couple of dates with some very nice women, but it just wasn't there. But then I went on Google and typed in Latina dating site. And then it came up with Latin American Cupid.com. So I went on there and I thought, what the heck? And I met this gorgeous woman on that site from Costa Rica. And it was her idea for us to have a Skype date. I'd never heard of such a thing. We had a Skype date. She said, I'm going to have a bottle of wine. You should have a bottle of wine. Let's have a Skype date. We're on Skype for over 2 hours.
Wow.
I was blown away by how beautiful and amazing. What I wasn't going to do, Abby, was settle for anything less than amazing. I wasn't going to settle for anything less, not even a teeny tiny bit less than amazing. So she was amazing. Right then and there, I told her I'm going to fly to Costa Rica. Things were financially a little bit better for me at the time. I'm going to fly to Costa Rica and I would like to meet you. And I'm going to schedule it for a month from now so that if you change your mind, you can back out. So what I did not know is that a lot of men are not, this is a nice way of saying it, not truth tellers. I know me and I tell the truth. So she said, send me your itinerary. So I emailed it to her while we were on the Skype date. I didn't know at the time that she thought that I was not serious.
Right.
So come to Costa Rica. It's a beautiful country. She's an amazing woman. And she has now been my wife for 9 years. So from heartbreak over my wife leaving me for another man, which was unfathomable, to everything I just told you, and then to be back. And I have the most amazing wife. She is beautiful. She is smart. She's just an amazing woman. And I never thought that I could ever find somebody again who is truly amazing. But that is what I have. I am so thankful for my amazing wife. And it wasn't her idea to live in Costa Rica. It was mine. I came here for her daughter. I went back to Dallas. She came to visit me a couple of times. I came to Costa Rica for her oldest daughter's wedding. And then we went to the beach town very close to where she was born, on a farm in the middle of nowhere. And I fell in love with it. Her mother had just been diagnosed with cancer. And so she said, can I stay? And I said, stay as long as you want. You don't know what the future holds.
Right.
Her mother was 81, I think, at the time. And so I said, of course. So I go back to Dallas and I'm in our apartment and I am dreaming at night about Costa Rica. I'm looking at pictures. I'm looking at videos. I am daydreaming about Costa Rica. I'm not getting a thing done. And then I just went, why am I living in Dallas?
Right.
I don't need to live in Dallas. And so I called her up on WhatsApp and I said, what would you think if we lived in Costa Rica instead of Dallas? She said, I'd love that. I said, okay, let's do it. I've already got 2 tickets ready to go on Southwest Airlines to fly to Costa Rica. I don't know what, but we're going to move it in 45 days.
Yep.
And boom, made the decision, did it. This blue monstrosity behind me is my booth. It weighs like 800 or 900 pounds. It's one of the few things I brought from the United States. Mostly I sold or gave away everything I own, except for my recording equipment and all my stuff to do this. And 45 days later, baby, I'm in Costa Rica and I am never moving anywhere else. And since we bought this condo, this is where I'm going to live till I'm not living.
That's so beautiful. Like when you know
Well,
you're supposed to be somewhere, you have to be where you're meant to be. You're not settled
absolutely
until you are. Absolutely beautiful.
great.
Tell me more about
Thank you.
like the recording equipment and how podcasting plays a role in all of this, because my audience is primarily people who are kind of getting into podcasting, and I always love telling the stories of how podcasting can change your life. So tell me all about that journey.
Absolutely. Did I say that I've lived a few lives in my 66, almost 67 years?
You may have
So
mentioned a couple.
moved to Costa Rica, and I've got a couple of part-time freelance gigs that I'm thinking are going to last a long time, and that's how I'm going to make my money. I tried to sell the booth in Dallas, tried to sell it. Nobody would buy it. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to give this thing away. It wasn't cheap. So I shipped it. The freelance gigs both ended within 2 months. So now I'm living in a strange country where I cannot legally work, and I would not do what I couldn't legally do. So I got no way of making an income. That was frightening. So I started narrating audiobooks, which I had done before in Dallas. So started over from scratch, narrating audiobooks for other people. Now, one of the interesting things is my wife would continue to tell me that she does not have a pension. So that upon my, and because of the laws and everything, my Social Security, even though we've been married all these years, Flory will never get my Social Security. So upon my death, it's not good. So I'm trying to figure out, what could I do? Well, I started doing some audiobooks with royalties attached. It didn't make a lot of money off of those. But then I thought, you know what? I love science fiction. I love that genre more than any other. Started with Planet of the Apes in 1968, if I remember correctly. I saw the first movie at the Orpheum Theater in Sioux City, Iowa, and every Planet of the Apes movie since in the theater. That's the way it has to be. Love that franchise. So I'm thinking, how am I going to make this work financially? So I read on a Facebook group about public domain stories. Never thought about that. Public domain simply means the rights holder did not continue to apply for the rights so that they expired. So now they're free and open for anybody to use pretty much however they see fit. So I started narrating public domain audiobooks, and I say, Flory, now, baby, this is going to be good for us because it's all our revenue. We don't have to share it with anybody. So the first month I recorded, 10, 12 short stories. And at the end of the month, the next month, I'm like, hey, we're going to get royalties, baby. This is going to be awesome. And we made $5.
Better than
Now,
zero.
yeah, well, it is better than zero, but you can't live on $5. So I continued to do audiobooks for other people and do the sci-fi public domain stories whenever I could fit them in, with the long-term goal of eventually just sci-fi just for us, so that she would indeed have a pension. Months later, I'm on another Facebook group, and a guy talking about his podcast and how he's doing quite well with his podcast. And narrators were blasting him, saying, "You're giving away for free what takes us, all this." Anyway, so I guess I'm a contrarian, Abby, because I thought, well, if this guy says it's working for him, maybe there's something to this. About that time, somebody said, man, you should start a podcast, Scott, with these vintage science fiction short stories. So I put two and two together and started the Lost Sci-Fi Podcast February 23rd or 24th of 2022. Now, I didn't know anything about podcasting. So if people who are watching this now say, I don't know much about it or anything about it, you can be successful. And you can be successful beyond your wildest dreams. Because this little podcast that I started, I didn't even know where to host it. I hosted it with this company that I knew of that had no way of tracking downloads. There was no reporting at all. It was where I was selling my audiobooks direct to the public, but they also did podcasts, and I didn't know any better. So I stayed with them for, 4, 5, 6 months, who knows how long. Then I switched because I didn't know. I didn't know anything. Okay, except that I have a microphone, I have a booth, I have the skills to do this. So I switched podcast hosting 2 or 3 times since then, went to a place. I said, okay, if I mention my podcast hosting,
Yeah, please
Is that
do.
cool with you? Okay.
Yes.
Acast.com, ACAST.com. Highly recommend it. And I'll tell you why. I didn't monetize the podcast for almost 2 years because I didn't know how. Again, I didn't know anything except I knew I could create the podcast episodes. That I knew. So I'm on another Facebook group, and I learn a lot on Facebook and Google. So I'm on this Facebook group, and somebody says, I'm with this company. It was a Facebook group for this company's hosting. And this guy says, I think by switching to this other company, I can make about $1,000 a month. And again, people just started beating him up verbally. Why would you switch? It's a great company we're with now. And I'm thinking, oh, wait a second. And I commented, if this guy thinks he can make $1,000 a month over the next decade, that's $120,000.
Yeah.
That he's saying no to, and that's only if he doesn't grow.
Right.
If he grows, it could be $250,000 or more. So he switched, I think. But are you familiar with listennotes.com?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I looked up his podcast on Listen Notes, and I thought I was doing okay. He had more than I had. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I don't make 1,000, but
Yeah.
whatever. So I sent an email to Acast customer support, and I knew what I was going to get back, but I did it anyway. I have this podcast. I have this many downloads per week, per month. Here's the last average over the last 3 months. Do you have any idea how much I would make? And I knew they weren't going to tell me, and they didn't. They said it's difficult to predict. But I switched anyway. And here's one of the reasons I switched. It's so simple. I don't remember the button, but you hit the button, hit the link, and it's basically to apply for monetization. So I did it like the day after I switched. And of course, they had no tracking data because I'd just been there for a day.
Right.
I did it again like 2 or 3 weeks later, and boom, I got accepted. A few weeks later, they sent me an email saying that I was going to get some money. I was only with them for like 10 days in the month of October 2024. And I got like $400.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I had no idea. That's why I asked if it was okay if I mentioned it, because
Yeah, definitely.
I am telling you that I will never switch from Acast. I'm flattered that another company has approached me 3 times now, trying to get me to switch to them. And I won't mention their name. I'm not saying anything disparaging about them. It's just that I love Acast, and I'm going to stay with Acast forever. I did that, as a partial month, and the next month I made over $1,000.
Is that all through just like dynamic ad insertion, or how
Yes.
that's all dynamic
Yeah.
ads? Really?
That's all dynamic ads. I did nothing to do my podcast and put the ad placement in the middle. And it has grown considerably since then, thankfully. I now have the #1 science fiction podcast in 33 countries around the world. Abbey, I had no idea any of this was going to happen. I just knew. I think there's a lot of reasons why I've been successful, but I knew that I was going to start and never stop. I made a non-negotiable commitment to myself that I was going to do this. I'm going to do the Lost Sci-Fi Podcast until I'm dead, which pretty difficult to do it after posthumously, or physically I cannot continue. Okay? If for some reason can't continue. So, other than that, I'm in this forever. I hope that I've done 462 or 63 episodes, something like that. I hope I'm still doing this at 80. If I am, I would probably have somewhere in excess of 2,500 episodes, maybe 3,000 or more. One of the things, if you want to be successful in podcasting, you got to have a commitment to stick with it. Did you know, Abbey? And I did not. I didn't know this when I started, but I looked it up later. Somebody told me about it. I looked it up. The average number of podcast episodes a podcast will have is like 3 or 4. People start, oh, this is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Or they think, I didn't reach phenomenal success immediately, right? So, and I didn't either. Like I said, it was almost 2 years before I made any money from the podcast. But then I started making money, and it's coming in every single month. And I absolutely love what I do. I love getting in that booth. I am doing a story right now that I think I've done 497 or 98 stories so far, because some episodes have more than one short story in them. I'm doing a story now that if you want a phenomenal story, give me about 2 or 3 days and it'll be on the Lost Sci-Fi podcast. It's called The Cold Equations by Tom Godwin. It goes back to 1954, 55, something like that. Abbey, the most incredible story I've done so far. And I've done some cool stuff by Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury and Philip K. Dick, the giants,
Yeah.
Mary Shelley, the giants of early science fiction. And then a lot of stuff with people you've never heard of before. But this story, I'm telling you, if you're watching us now, and how would you know about it if you weren't watching us now? I don't know why people say that. I don't know why I just said it. The Cold Equations, Tom Godwin. When you hear this episode, it's just amazing. And it was written 70 years ago.
Wow.
So
I'll make sure I get a link for that in the show notes.
Oh, amazing. Gosh. It's so I love what I do. So when people ask me about what are the keys to podcast success, number one, make a commitment, man. People quit stuff every single day. They quit the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, quit marriages, jobs, everything. Don't quit. Don't be a quitter. Because, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now, but in the United States, I have been as high as number 8 in science fiction. The 4 podcasts at the top. 2008 is when they started, 2011, 2012, and somebody 2019. Joe Rogan didn't become successful for, depending on how you measure success, 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I will hit year 4 in February of next year, so a couple of months. And I feel like I'm just getting started, but I've had all what I determined to be success already. So you got to be committed. And then one of the other things that's really important is niche or niche clarity. You got to be, what you're going to hear when you go to the Lost Sci-Fi Podcast? It's the Lost Sci-Fi Podcast - vintage sci-fi short stories. My title tells you exactly what you're going to get. I don't do modern science fiction. I don't do interviews with science fiction authors. I do lost sci-fi, vintage sci-fi short stories. So if your name of your podcast tells people what they can get, that helps you, because nobody's looking for the Scott Miller podcast. But I did have a guy recently on Spotify tell me he found me by looking up sci-fi, and there I was in the search. Yep. He says, I love your podcast. I'm so glad I found you. If I titled it the Scott Miller podcast, he never would have found me. I wouldn't be where I am today on the podcast. That's another important thing, the name of your podcast. But niche clarity, do the same thing every single time. If all of a sudden on the podcast, I've got an interview with some author that nobody ever heard of, and I have, amazingly, tens of thousands of listeners, they would not be happy with me. They would click on that, listen to it for 5 seconds and go, what the heck happened to Scott?
Yeah, this isn't what I signed up for.
Exactly. And many of them would unsubscribe immediately and never listen to me again. So you got to know what you're doing and keep doing what you're doing and don't deviate from it. Then you got to do it long enough to build an audience. And there's a thing, discoverability. You got to be discoverable. People have to be able to find you. So you use the keywords. In my case, if somebody's looking in the future for the Cold Equations by Tom Godwin, I'm going to be high in the search rankings. My website page is going to be high in the rankings. My Apple Podcast for me does really well in search because it's an authority website. So that's going to be there. Acast, this is another reason why I love being with them, and I didn't know that this was going to happen. Acast ranks well in search. So a lot of times I am in the top 5 with 3 of them. Apple Podcasts, my website, lostsci-fi.com, and the Acast. So sometimes I'm dominating the top 10. So if they're looking for a story and they see me everywhere, that works. And then I use, are you familiar with Headliner?
I am. I love Headliner.
Okay, good. You get it free when you go with Acast.
Oh,
I never
really?
pay. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my!
So that
I
that
just
pays
signed
for
up
your
for
hosting.
2 years.
Okay, well, I wish we'd had this conversation before
Right?
that. So, but you can still use that account and get a free one with Acast. So I don't even pay for it, but I use that. And so I am now committed. I wasn't doing this very seriously before, but I am now. Every episode, if it's long enough and I can squeeze it out of there, I create 60 videos. Really, it's 30 square, 30, 9 by 16.
Yep.
And I put those suckers everywhere I can. So that works. And this is another reason why your podcast, the longer you go, the better off you are in discoverability, because now I have almost 500 episodes for people to search for. Stories by Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and all that stuff. And so if they're looking for that, I'm not aware of, and I don't think there is, but I'm not aware of anybody in the science fiction space that has done anything close to the amount that we have done. So longevity helps you. Now, it hurts you in the beginning because you haven't been around long.
Right.
But man, podcasting is a long game. There are times when you don't want to do a podcast episode, you're sick or whatever, but you got to power through. You got to be consistent. And man, I just love it. And I love talking to people about podcasting because it's been so good for me. My wife, my wife used to say a lot, Flora used to say this a lot, I don't have a pension. And what she was saying, and I don't blame her for this, if you die, where am I? And she was telling me she was concerned. And she used to say that a lot. And I don't blame her for saying that. I am so thankful she said that.
Right.
Because she altered our future, mine and hers, by motivating me to find a way to provide for us. If I get sick and I can't work, I still have all these episodes that are still generating revenue. But you know what's really gratifying? I still have a U.S. bank account. We have a U.S. bank account and have a bank account, a couple of them in Costa Rica. I switched about 3 or 4 months ago. My audiobook sales from all the retailers around the world and libraries and everything, those now go directly deposited to our Costa Rica bank account, and our podcast revenue now directly deposited into our Costa Rica bank account. And my wife hasn't brought up for many months, I don't have a pension, because now she does. Thanks to podcasting and this voice and that booth and a desire to take good care of my wife. So I'm very thankful for all of this. If people get started podcasting, don't stop. Do not stop. I wish you knew more than I knew when I started, because I didn't know anything. So I wish that for you. And hopefully just by watching Abbey, you're going to learn and learn and learn and be able to apply it. But I know what my future holds. My audience, here's another thing, Abbey, about how being a podcaster for a long time benefits you. If you start a science fiction podcast, I don't mind sharing everything I know and everything I can do to help people. Because if somebody starts a science fiction podcast, they go, oh, I can narrate stories and I can do vintage sci-fi in the public domain. I can do what Scott's doing. Come on in. But a month from now, when you've got 5 episodes, congratulations, you've got 5 episodes. If somebody finds you, the most they can do is listen to 5 episodes.
Right.
But if they find me and they like the Lost Sci-Fi Podcast, Abbey, they're going to listen. And I get this all the time in 5-star reviews, emails. I am binge listening. I listen to 2 or 3 a night, or I've listened to everything but 70 episodes. I'm trying to catch up with you. And I'm like, please do catch up with me, catch up with me.
Keep going.
But they have all of this inventory, all of these stories to listen to. And that's another reason. And I did not expect to be number 1 in any country. I really had no expectations. But when it starts happening and then it keeps growing, what's happening is new people in that country are discovering my podcast for the very first time. and they're listening to all the episodes they can take as fast as they can go. And I hear this all the time. They are sharing it with the people they know. One guy says, I'm telling everybody who will listen to me about your podcast. So another important thing is do a good podcast. Do the absolute best you can do every single time. Give it your best. Do not stop giving it your best. No, in my case, when I walk out of this booth, I know I have done the absolute best I can do. And if I'm not feeling it, mine's a little different. You can't just walk away mid interview. That wouldn't work. But in my case, I can stop. If I'm not feeling it and it's just not working, and I just get out and leave the booth, get something to eat, go talk to my wife.
I tell my clients that all the time, especially the ones that record just solo episodes. I'm like, if you're not feeling it, go take a lap around your house and come back to this. It can wait.
Absolutely. Do it right. Quality matters. It's always going to matter. But man, stick with it. I am so thankful for this opportunity to talk to you today and hopefully bring some value to somebody out there that watches this so that they know. You don't have to know everything when you get started. I didn't know anything, or I would not have hosted my podcast with a company that does not give you any reports. I knew nada for several months. And then when I started looking at the numbers, this is another thing. When you start looking at the numbers, don't get upset because your numbers, you're getting 10 downloads an episode or 12 or 20 or whatever. Now I'm used to be honest with you, I'm used to now seeing within 24 hours, 2,000 to 5,000 within 24 hours. But I also have this back catalog that is getting downloads in that 24-hour period of time. So that's what's so cool about it. So if you're, in my case, I market my audiobooks that are for sale, but that has become a secondary income compared to the podcast income because the audience is so huge. Well, to me, when you have 25 to 30,000 listeners, that to me is huge. It may not be huge to other people, but for me, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, no, I think this is all super valuable information. I think this is going to be very inspirational for the bulk of my audience who are new podcasters and just getting into the industry. Like, this is inspirational and aspirational. And I just think that I love hearing stories of how podcasting can change a person's life because it's changed my life. And everyone who gets into it and sticks with it, it will change your life for the better. Ophelia.
Love sharing this with people. It's like, here's the truth. I believe, pretty healthy. My cardiologist says I'm doing pretty good for a guy that had a heart attack and died. That's another long story, but I had a heart attack and died 21 years ago. And I'm talking about dead at the house, blue, not breathing for minutes. Amazing. The paramedics got there and brought me back to life. Flatlined at the hospital a bunch of times. Was in the hospital for a month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, very thankful to be alive. But when you go through life, you never know where it's going to go, the twists, the turns, and all of that stuff. But there are lessons to be learned from all of these things. And if you can learn a lesson from me, it's that you can be really dumb when you start this podcast venture. You don't have to know hardly anything. Maybe that's not the best way to start, but you can still be successful. And I love what I do. I love sharing it with people because at this stage of my life, while I think I'm reasonably healthy, you don't know. You don't know how much longer you have. I have friends every week, every month that are younger than me, some that are older than me that pass. And it happens every single day. So you don't know. But I do know this. I'm going to share with people the honest truth about what I've done to be successful and hope that they get something from it. I thank you, Abbey, for this tremendous opportunity to share with you and your audience today. I cannot thank you enough for that. It fills me up inside to know, even if only one person gets something from it, that I've helped somebody. And that's a cool thing.
It really is.
That's a cool thing. Nobody can take that feeling away from me.
Yeah.
And from you, from what you're doing every single episode.
Yeah, I think that is a beautiful way to close out this episode. That is, I couldn't have said it better myself, Scott. You just take the reins from here. You can be Abby the podcast lady.
Well, I would look kind of funny as Abby, the podcast lady.
This has just been fantastic. I'm so happy that we had a chance to connect, and I hope we can do so again in the future because I know you have more stories to share. So we'll have to do this again.
I would love to do it. I would be honored to do it. I thank you again for this opportunity. I just started doing interviews in the last week. I love sharing this information with people because I love bringing hope to people. You know, I love saying you can start like I did, not know a darn thing. But if you stick with it, you learn as you go, you maintain the core principles, niche clarity, don't change what you're doing, don't stop doing what you're doing, you can have success.
That's the soundbite right there, pulling that one out. Well, Scott, this is great. Where can people connect with you, find you online? Where should they go to listen to your show and just be invested in your world as well?
LostSci-Fi.com. There's an About Me section. I even mentioned Wrestling the Bear. It's got this huge picture of me. I don't know why I made the picture so big, but it's huge. LostSci-Fi.com. You can look for the Lost Sci-Fi Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. If you just do a Google search, I'm like everywhere. I had no idea that was coming either. I have a newsletter that if you're into sci-fi, sign up for the newsletter. It's free, cool stories, free sci-fi. I give free science fiction out, commercial free, every single week because I love exposing more people to these amazing talents. So lostsci-fi.com, and then look for the Lost Sci-Fi Podcast wherever you go. Sign up for the newsletter if that trips your trigger. If not, no big deal. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you
I
for
truly
coming on and doing
appreciate
this.
you.
This has been a wonderful way to spend a Wednesday.
Thank you.